want to welcome everyone to Collector's Showcase, a series dedicated to discovering the collector behind the collection. We've all heard stories about trophy collections, the rarest autographs, and even full master sets. But who is behind them? This series will reveal that and much more. The guests featured here are among the most influential collectors, personalities, and icons in the Pokemon hobby. Join me. We'll find out who they are, where they came from, and what they're doing now. A series created by the hobby, for the hobby. This is Collector's Showcase. Welcome, everybody. Episode 2 of Collector's Showcase. Really happy that you guys are all here. And I've been looking forward to this one actually for a couple of weeks now. So without further ado, I want to bring on our guests. We have AestheticChimp and we have Swolepoke on today. So the first person, AestheticChimp, I've followed him for a good while now. We've talked a lot back and forth, really big into the autograph card market, and very, very excited for us to hear everything that he has going on. So first off, Cole, AestheticChimp.
How's it going, man?
How are you today, man?
I'm good. It was a hectic day, but we made it in time, so we're happy.
We did. So, well, I guess before we, really get into it, just wanted to give you kind of a minute here to maybe give a backstory of who you are. I know there's not a ton of YouTube presence for you out there. I know you've been on a few different channels. So if you want to maybe give a little bit of backstory of, how you are engaged in the hobby and, what's going on with you.
Yeah. So my name is Cole. Online, I'm AestheticChimp. I've been selling Pokemon cards since about 2016, collecting since much longer than that. I actually got lucky. My sister donated her collection to me when she grew out of Pokemon and before it was valuable, and I luckily adopted that. And that's actually the reason that I got into Pokemon so heavily. As prices came back up, we ended up finding the binders down in the basement, and I got to hold on to those and start grading cards. Excuse me. I basically went through this process where I started getting into more rare cards, went from, collecting just various graded things into gold stars. That was my big transition initially. And then I realized that I wanted something a little bit even more special. I didn't have the budget yet for trophy cards, but the next echelon, I think below that of rarity, and in some cases even more rare than some trophy cards, would be autograph cards. So I started looking out for those. And as I realized, and I went through that process, there wasn't very much information out there. It was difficult for me. There are basically like 3 E4 forum posts and a couple YouTube videos talking about it. And so I had to reach out to people like Jeremy, who's also going to be in this broadcast with us, and Alec Pokemon and a few other people like that to get that information. And so what I've started doing and kind of my digital presence is designed around providing some of that market data for people to give a little bit of analysis and kind of unveil some of the secrecy that is behind a lot of autograph cards.
Yeah, no, that's so awesome. And that's one of the reasons I was so intrigued and excited to have you on, is because there's not really, and we'll talk about it obviously as we go through everything, but there's not a lot of data out there. And you've been one of the very few that has been very transparent with that and kind of doing the, I guess, lack of a better term, dirty digging to find all of this information and putting it together for, people in the hobby to actually ingest and enjoy, whether they're new to it or have been in for a while. Because like you said, it's a very niche of the niche, and it's very hard to find these things. And I use the phrase, page 8 on an E4 thread is pretty accurate for a lot of that. So no, I so appreciate it. And like you mentioned, people like Jeremy, who I will bring on now. Jeremy is one of the OG collectors in this hobby, personalities, whatever you want to call him. He's kind of a jack of all trades. He has recently transitioned over to working with a new Kickstarter TCG called Kryptik as well. But I want to introduce everybody to Jeremy, aka Swolepoke. How's it going, man?
That intro video was so cool.
Thanks, man. Pokemon DNA. He seems to be taking off on everybody's channel. He does Rusty TCA Gaming's intros as well. So I recorded audio, but he stuck it all together and made it pretty for me. I appreciate it.
Man, I feel like everyone does like a little 5-second intro themselves, and you have like the nice video and the edits and the music. That was cool.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Well, Jeremy, kind of similar to what Cole did, just kind of get an idea of, for anyone who doesn't know who you are, how you got in the hobby, why you're here, what you're doing. Would love to hear that.
Yeah, man. So I think, like most people, I am a 90s kid who grew up loving Pokemon, and that love just kind of never fully went away. Um, for me, I was obsessed with Charizard like everyone else, and probably what got me fully into the hobby, like kind of where I'm at now, was I would always buy packs here and there growing up, and my parents knew that. And so, as a joke, on my 18th birthday, they bought me legendary treasure booster packs. I opened
Yeah.
4 or 5 of them, and I ended up pulling a full art. And that was the first time I had ever seen a full art Pokemon card. And I just remember it blew my mind so much so I went online, I think like the next day, and just started researching the heck out of what has Pokemon become since I stopped collecting as like a little kid. And that's when I found out about like the Verse series in Japan. That's when I found out about trophy cards and all these cards that never even touched US soil. And from that point forward, I got on Instagram, since that's what was hot back then, made a Pokemon Instagram account. And that's kind of how this whole thing started for me. And I've never looked back since. And that was like 10 years ago now. So
Yeah, no, I've seen you in for a long time, man, and I think I have something, kind of a fairly similar story. It's like, you find one little breadcrumb of something that you didn't know that was in the hobby, especially when it comes to Japanese cards, and you just never stop chasing it. There's always something new to learn, and I think that's part of why a lot of us, kind of still engage in this hobby, because I've never met anyone who just knows it all, who has been able to find every niche, every single piece of information, and even to this day, we still find out about cards that we thought were lost to time. The first one that comes to mind is the number one female trainer that only collectibles, I think, Motion just graded a 10. I mean, that's never appeared except for the winner's photos from way back in the day. So just little stuff like that, along with snap cards coming out a lot more this year. It's just a really exciting, hobby to still be able to see some of these things come in. So, well, like I said earlier, guys, I so appreciate both of you guys jumping into this. I'm excited to, talk about a lot of different subjects today. And for anybody in chat, I got asked, where's my mustache? Jeremy took it today. So just so you guys know, questions and things like that, guys, we'll do them a little bit more toward the end of the stream. We're going to go through some questions for both of you guys, and then I'll have some individual things based on some projects and stuff like that you guys are both in. So I guess to start off, because I know Jeremy and Cole, both of you guys actually are really into autograph cards, and Jeremy, I know you were collecting, I want to say it was like a Sugimori collection or something there for a while. But I'm curious for both of you guys, and Cole, you kind of touched on it a little bit, but how did you get into autograph cards? How did you discover these, and what was the appeal, to you when it comes to that? You don't see as many autograph collectors in the hobby as a general thing to collect.
Yeah. Cole, you want to start?
Sure. Actually, so my autograph start came from one E4 forum post that was talking about the different variations of Sugimori autographs. And that was actually my first experience with Jeremy, because you were in that thread asking the questions when it first came out back in like 2018. And it was just kind of funny how like stuff comes together like that. But I saw on that Scott posted, he posted a picture of Sugimori signing a Lucario Reverse Hollow with that iconic Pikachu sketch on it. I was like, oh, that's a pretty cool card. And then I looked up the pricing of all of them. I was like, oh yeah, that's not going to happen. Then transitioned over. I started looking into other illustrators, because obviously I was like, oh well, I like Charizard. Charizard's cool. Found that Arita autograph Charizards aren't too crazy, and then kind of went down the rabbit hole with a few other primary illustrators. There's a lot of kind of niche people that are off to the sides that I really have no experience with, but I typically like to stay around a lot of the, I guess mostly the WotC area illustrators are the primary ones, because those are the ones that end up having the most value and the most nostalgia for me, because I basically was out of Pokemon for like 2007 through 2016. So nothing in that region, and all those new illustrators that came on board, I have no personal feelings towards. So kind of jumping back into the older ones, it was really cool. I'm a big art collector. I went to school for design originally, and I like the connection that pieces have to artists themselves. I collect like lithographs and prints of various different artworks. On like the fine art side of things. And something that's really important for me has always been actually having the artwork signed by the artist. I think that it adds a nice personal touch, and it makes me feel more connected to the individual that actually created the piece. And so I think that kind of love for having a connection with the individual that created the artwork transitioned directly over into Pokemon. We see sports cards with autographs on them are super common, super valuable. Everybody loves them. But then a lot of times when I go to conventions and I bring out autographed cards, like, well, here's the person who signed this. Like, obviously Charizard isn't signing the card. So there's kind of like that. There's like a level of knowledge that was required to kind of understand that the appeal for it that always has to be explained. That I just kind of luckily stumbled across when I was going through E4.
Sure.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Were you going to say something?
I don't know. I just said that's awesome. That's a lot of good information. What about you, Jeremy?
For sure. Honestly, I don't know what got me into signed cards. I think it was one of those things like Cole had mentioned earlier where you get to a point in collecting where you want to start diversifying your collection. You kind of want to start finding what's the niche, what's the rare, what's the scarce items out there. And I think, honestly, it was E4 too, just kind of having discussions about Ken Sugimori and slowly realizing, like, hey, this guy does not sign anymore. He's restricted to signing. So pretty much what's out there is what's available. We're not going to be getting, a flood of Sugimori signed cards unless for some crazy reason he does a signing and has the permission from Pokemon to even do that. And I was a little late to the signature game, I'd say. I got into it probably back in like 2017 or 2018. It was right after Arita did his big signing in Florida, which is where a ton of crazy pieces came out, because I think that was the first time that Pokemon kind of realized, like, oh, shoot, we need to put some restrictions on our artists, because Arita was drawing Charizards, Cubone. He was doing all this crazy artwork with no sort of, like, holding back. So people were getting these amazing pieces. And after a lot of those started coming to the market, I realized, like, hey, like, this is super unique product and items. And like Cole said, signed cards is, I think, something just is kind of in our nature to appreciate and have sought after, because it's, it's a piece of history, the artist, there's so many attachments to it. And so my first major signing was in Dallas at regionals with, I think it's pronounced Fukuda or Fukuda.
I say Fukada. I was going through doing research for this, and I was like, Cole is going to kill me because I'm going to butcher every name that we talk about. So.
I feel like I never pronounce his name right. There's always someone who's like, no, it's pronounced the other way. And I'm like, okay,
yeah.
Well, we know who we're all talking about. But just meeting him, having him there in person, signing cards, it just gave me a whole different appreciation level of this art. And from then on out, I just went in deep and was going after everything I could find. But as Cole was saying, there's not a lot out there. So it takes a lot of time and research to find a lot of these cards that we have, because they're not as available as people think they are.
And that's one of the things that it's actually funny that you posted it today. It's kind of a callback to it, because I had this like written down. I wanted to ask you about this. Imakuni is one of my favorite like characters, people like that's ever been put into Pokemon. I remember it was the old actual like the trading card game you play on Game Boy. If you guys remember that way back in the day, I remember that was the first time I got introduced. I was like, who is this mouse guy? Like, what is going on? And then, after looking at kind of the history of him for a while, seeing that he was, hosting like the Super Trader Showdowns and stuff like that way back in the day, and just really, really involved in it. What was it like meeting Imakuni? Like, is he just a wacky guy, or is he just kind of a guy that is really good at playing the character? I know that you had I think it was a Porygon, if I'm not mistaken, that was signed by him, right?
Yeah. So to be honest, I probably wouldn't have recognized him in person if I wasn't with a friend who lived in Japan and had seen him at regional events in Japan. So he's known to still frequent tournaments, little like events here and there in Japan, but like, without the full outfit on, who the heck is going to recognize that guy? And so a buddy of mine pointed him out and was like, hey, that's Imakuni. So we ran over to him. I asked if I could just get a photo, because I didn't want to ask him for a signature in like a public place, because I know artists can be kind of weird about that. And so he agrees to take a photo. And as we're getting set up, he stops us, reaches into his backpack, and pulls out like the Imakuni, like
the mouse ears.
yeah, out of nowhere. And then he does that like crazy pose where he's pointing, and he was being loud and obnoxious, and it was cool. It was nice meeting him. But I think even at that time, I didn't realize how big a part he played in Pokemon back in the 90s. You know, he was one of the artists. He helped with a lot of design. He did a lot more for the company other than just being this mouse looking character. And he still does a lot of artwork for the company as well, too. He, I think, recently did a card just a couple of years ago. So I think he's still pretty heavily involved. So it's cool getting to meet like one of the OG people who, you know, fueled this whole thing for us.
Yeah, and that's one thing I enjoyed seeing, like, you post that, because I was going to ask him, because I remember I remember from a long time ago, whenever you originally posted that, I was like, Imakuni, like, this is amazing. And yeah, just going and looking at what he does, you know, it's hard to even say what Imakuni is, you know, in Pokemon. Right. You know, you can't just say, okay, he's an illustrator, or, you know, anything like that. I mean, he's a character, an illustrator. He's even some of the and I could be incorrect on this, but I remember the #1 trainer, the female trainer that just got graded. The translation, I think it says a message from Imakuni, which, yeah. I mean, that's such a big deal, you know, for on your #1 card, that's the guy that you're quoting, and he gets to write the message for it. So it's pretty wild to see someone as unique as that. And I'm very envious that you got to meet him. I have his weird trainer card from '97 that's him, like, you know, being the mouse or whatever. And that's one of the goals, in one of my only autograph goals, is I'd love to get a signed Imakuni card of him, actually the character. So no, that was one thing I wanted to bring up, because it's such a cool story. Cole, a question for you. So, and this actually might open up a lot more of the conversation that we talk around autograph cards. I want to, you know, give you a few minutes to kind of talk about the project that you're doing when it comes to autographs, because as we kind of talk about this, you know, as we mentioned in the beginning, there's not really a ton of data out there. And I know a lot of people that I talked about, you know, with this stream upcoming, they don't know anything about autographs. They can maybe name they can name Arita, you know, that, as everybody probably can. And some of the data that you put out is essential and just amazing to be able to read and ingest that, because I haven't seen, like I said, anyone put out as much detail as you have recently. And I'd love to give you a few minutes to kind of talk about what project you're doing. I think it's Dick and Jane 1989, I think, is who you're doing this with, on Instagram, for anybody watching. So yeah, I guess maybe give us an overview of the project and what the goal is and what you guys are doing.
Yeah, so I collaborated with Dick and Jane's, which is a brick and mortar store down in Jacksonville, Florida. I'm actually their VP of social media, so it kind of linked up perfectly there. Basically, when I was going through the process, I realized that one of the biggest problems is that there's no information out about autographs, especially the price point of things. And you can kind of go through and look at recent sales for a lot of stuff like you can with comps, but it gets difficult when you're looking at someone who's exceptionally rare, like Sugimori or Nishida. You're just not going to find comps for those. And so I went through, and starting a few months ago, I went back as far as I could on 130 points for all eBay sales. And then I went back until June of 2021, and I pulled down all the data for all the different illustrators, paid attention to what the card was, what the grade of the card, grade of the autograph, and whether or not there was a sketch and a personalization on the autograph. And took all that data, compiled it in, threw it into SPSS, did some really basic analysis, and then more recently did a little bit of regression analysis to actually figure out if we could figure out what something's worth based on all that data. And then I just tried to present it in such a way that kind of answered some of the more basic questions that I ended up getting a lot when I started jumping in to helping people price out autographs. So we looked at average sale price. We looked at average sale price without the value of the card. We looked at the average increase or decrease with various different grades of the card, the autograph, if there's personalization, sketches, all that sort of thing. Unfortunately, the current sample size for most illustrators is a little bit too low to really get a good understanding of what the market looks like. I think Sugimori is a really good example of that. Until recently, I think that we've had 3 golden auctions in the past few months, and a few that have come up on PWCC over the past couple months. and those like 6 data points is adding another like 40% to the total data points we have for Sugimori, because there's aren't enough sales. So a lot of the numbers that came out in the initial analysis that was done have fluctuated a decent amount as the market changes, and that's kind of one of the hard parts about the project, is that it's not going to be a static thing where a Sugimori is always worth this much, and you just add that value to whatever the card is, and then that gets you your answer, because there are so many little intangible things. The most data that we ended up getting was for Arita, and I pulled up the relative scarcity. So when I looked at active listings over the past 60 days, Arita just completely overpowers everybody else. He had almost 100 active listings of PSA or BGS graded cards with almost 40 sales, and then the next closest is basically nobody. If you combine every other major illustrator, all of their listings together, it totals still less than what Arita has available.
And I do have a question on that, actually, before you keep going.
Yeah.
And this is one thing I think I might have seen someone post a comment about this, maybe on one of your Instagram posts about this, but is it because Arita has just such a loose contract with Pokemon? Because I know we've kind of all talked about how they're very strict on their artists. And Jeremy, you mentioned that earlier. Does Arita just keep the OG? Like, he can just sign whatever he wants, whenever he wants? Or I guess why do you think that he is able to go to all of these signings and go to all these shows and do that? Is there any history behind that? Because that is one thing I'm curious about.
Yeah, so I'll give you what my understanding is, and I think Jeremy might be able to fill in some of the blanks there. So far as I'm aware, one of the differences between Arita is that he's officially a contractor, so he's not under the same restrictions as like a Pokemon company employee. Yeah, I do believe that at this point he is required to put personalizations on all sketching that on all autographs he's doing. And then I've also heard that there might be limitations on what he's allowed to sketch on cards, but I'm really not entirely sure on that. But he's definitely the most active, and it has consistently been in recent history on doing signings.
Yeah, and that pretty much sums it up too, I think. I've also heard that each artist has their own personal manager. So one manager might be easier to contact and set something up than another. I know Arita really enjoys signing events. I know he makes a decent amount of money. So, if you like being out in public, you like making some quick change for a weekend of signing, that's probably going to be a little more incentivizing for him, other than some of these other artists who might not care about that sort of thing at all. And as far as like the whole drawing Pokemon thing, Japan has one of the strictest IPs when it comes to protecting their intellectual properties. It's one of those things where, technically speaking, if an artist was to draw a Pikachu, by Japan's law, they own that drawing because they own the IP that is Pikachu.
Right.
So that's why it's very weird, like gray areas when artists do these signings, because if they don't have technically the strict or explicit permission of the Pokemon company to be drawing the images that they're drawing, technically Pokemon owns those and could file, a lawsuit or let them go for giving away property of the Pokemon company.
That's pretty crazy to think about, especially something that, some of these guys have actually created just out of their imaginations and drawn on, but they have the stamp of, well, no, unless it has 2 tails or 2 heads, I guess maybe they can get around that. I don't really know.
Yeah.
But that is one of the things too, especially when it comes to sketch stuff. Because Cole, one of the things that I found probably the most interesting data point that you pointed out was the 15% increase in the cost of an auto card if there's a sketch on it. Because that was one of the things that really stood out to me that I didn't really think about, because you've obviously seen, there's the Charizard drawn on it, the Pikachu. I assumed that it was just, okay, it's signed and it's got a cool picture on it and it's still going to go for the same price. But that was one of the biggest data points that I guess you said that, was it 15%? I think that number was right.
The number is different for every illustrator. So for Arita, the difference wasn't as significant. His was at, when we did the analysis, his was at 9%. And then I think overall the average was about 15%. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's also different because if you look at like Sugimori, the first signing he didn't do sketches. His English cursive signature, exceptionally rare, presumably much more valuable than anything now with this little Pikachu sketch. The Pikachu sketch, the presence of that doesn't increase the value because everything he signs basically has that. So now you run into another little wrinkle within the niche of a Sugimori autograph with a sketch of a Pokemon that is not Pikachu will be more valuable than the one that has the Pikachu because he always does Pikachu. So it's like a infinitely complicated thing, and you can jump down many rabbit holes trying to figure out all the answers.
Well, I think that's what makes it so fascinating, right? Is, and this is what I think we've all run into with different niches that we're in and stuff that we try to collect. With autographs, I mean, it makes sense to where you're like, type of Pokemon. I mean, you said an English cursive signature, like there's different variations of the signature, I guess, that he does. I think it's what makes it fun, because once you can find that, hey, I found the 3 people in the world who might have this, that's kind of the hardest part of it, I think.
Right.
But no, that's amazing. So I guess with the project itself, what's the long-term goal, for what you guys are putting out? Is it just mainly to bring kind of awareness to this? I know you've mentioned, you'd love for PSA to have a Illustrator pop report, which I absolutely love the idea of. Is the goal to kind of push enough awareness so that companies like that will respond to it, or is it just mainly to educate the hobby, or kind of a combination of both?
I think it's a combination of both. You can go in and look at various athletes and artists and look at how many products they've signed in PSA. Like, you can go see how many cards Mickey Mantle has ever signed. But you can go in and you can search for the illustrators, the Pokemon illustrators, and their name will pop up, but it doesn't actually give you any data. And I know PSA has it, and it would be very useful, I think, for us to kind of get context for just how rare some of these are. Because
think of a set registry. Like, if they
exactly.
made that, that would be amazing.
Yeah, or just have the understanding that there are 50,000 Arita signed cards versus 5,000 Sugimoris. Like, okay, that makes sense. Or it could be 500. Like, we just have no idea, because we only have what comes out to the market publicly or in private sales to kind of try to gauge some of that. It's very rare to actually have a true understanding of how many autographs exist of a certain artist. I think the only exception that I'm aware of would be Nishida, because it was 2 private signings that were done out in Japan, and there's a single picture of every single non-personalized card that she signed. And then talking to the guy who did the private signing, he estimates anywhere between 45 and 50 total cards that she's ever signed. And since she's never done a public signing, and to my knowledge, she's never done another private signing, that is the entire population. So that's like the only instance that we actually have, like, we don't know how many there are for everybody else, basically. So getting PSA on board and getting them to kind of provide some of that information, I think, would add another layer of transparency. But then I know that I went through a lot of struggles when I first started my journey into autographs, and there's just so much information that is out there but not accessible, that I just wanted to try to compile a lot of that information and make it readily available. And I think we're seeing, I think Jeremy mentioned, we're kind of in like a golden era right now of autographs, where we're getting so many amazing pieces that are coming to the market. And I think that this is going to help grow the autograph market in Pokemon as a whole, because people they're getting introduced to this. It's just, there's such a big information gap that trying to fill in some of those foundational pieces, I think, would be beneficial to bring more people in to that subset of the hobby.
And that does kind of lead into, a question I have for both you guys. And you kind of mentioned, definitely with signature cards, especially in, sports and things like that. I mean, they're huge. If you get rookie signatures and things like that, I mean, they're massive. Do you guys foresee autographed Pokemon cards ever ascending to that level, when it comes to illustrator signatures? I mean, obviously, if we can take out the outliers of, like, your rookie Jordans and stuff like that. But as far as the demand, the premium, I know we've seen it with the Celebi recently, and then obviously the Sugimoris are, and everything it just sold, being 5-figure cards. Yeah, I mean, they're huge. Do you guys ever see that being a norm that we see for certain illustrators, or is that going to be something that we're only going to get exceptions every couple of times a year?
Jamie, I'll let you hit this one first.
Yeah, so like I said earlier, I've always had this little fun theory that when everyone who is a 90s or millennial comes back to Pokemon, they all follow this similar path, which is they start collecting and they go, okay, I want to get the things that I had as a kid. So they all go for base set, fossil, rocket, jungle. They start collecting it, and then after a year or two, they realize, this isn't as rare as I thought it was, or I want more value, I want more rarity. And so then they start diversifying themselves and they start looking towards trophy cards. But now they're thinking, I can't afford a 5-figure trophy card. That's way out of my budget. So they start looking towards other avenues. And so a couple of years ago, we really saw a boom in the mid-2000 trophies and promos, because at the time, those were very affordable compared to a trophy Kangaskhan. But since then, those have gone up to 5 figures. So I think what's happening right now is people are continuing to look to other avenues of where is rarity, where is value, and signatures happens to be one of those things. And as far as them ever passing up sports cards, I'm a big believer that Pokemon is our generation's sports cards. A lot of us don't have a lot of sentimental attachment to Mickey Mantles or any sort of sports figures other than maybe Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, and a few others, like maybe Mike Trout. But for the most part, I think most of us are more attached to Pokemon than it is sports. And as we all continue to age and hopefully make more disposable income, we're going to be looking to put that in the stuff that we didn't have as kids or did have and are looking to get that back. And then on the topic of, signatures growing in value, like every other sort of collectible or hobby, for some reason, signed product just happens to be one of those things we all chase after. Everyone, always wants a celebrity signature when they see them in public, or everyone, like Cole was saying, wants art. There's just something beautiful about the uniqueness of art and signed product that I think there will always be a chase after. And if, the rarity of these items are realized more and more over time, and there's such a small pool of it compared to the buyer's pool, I don't see why it wouldn't continue to go up in value. Just like the Celebi that went for like 12 or 13,000 or 10,000, whatever it was.
10.5 on the Celebi and 13.2 for the Zard.
Yeah, I would have thought you were crazy like 2 years ago if someone was trying to sell me at those prices. But as the hobby's gotten bigger and more people want rare niche items, it makes sense for an item that rare that, how many Charizards are signed by Ken Sugimori out there? It's definitely, less than 1,000.
Yeah, well, for anybody watching who's not as familiar with Sugimori, I want to say, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, 2007, I think, was the last year he actually was doing any sign. He hasn't done a signing since 2007. Is that right?
He did one weird black and white signing in the UK in, I think that was 2011. But what I've heard, he wasn't signing Pokemon cards at that event. He was only signing the actual game cases. You might have seen some of those floating around. But technically speaking, his last public signing would have been 2007 for Pokemon cards.
Yeah, either way, at least a decade. And no signatures or anything coming out. That's so interesting.
So interestingly enough, there have been other Sugimori signatures that have come out since, but it's like the only way to do it is to win worlds. So there was I can't remember exactly. It was one of the more recent world trophies. I think it's like Red and Pikachu, the one that's like the Japanese trophy variant. There's one of those signed by Sugimori, and that's a card that came out in 2015 or 2016.
Are you talking about the Pokemon Center one that was given away?
It's been a while since I've seen it. I'm not entirely sure. I just thought that's the most recent card that's been released that I've seen signed by him. But that was, I heard that only happened because he happened to be at Worlds that year, privately, and then one of the top 3 guys ended up seeing him, and then got him to sign something, and that's obviously
just win the world championships.
Yeah, just win the world championships, and then.
That's the way you get a Sugimori signature now.
I think I know the one you're talking about because I've seen it posted on Twitter by the owner. And the funny thing is, I've heard a completely different story. And that's the funny thing about these signatures is, a lot of them are just, rumors or, we have to go based off of, bits and pieces of information.
Yeah.
Because, for the last 10 years, no one's thought to keep track of all these different events down to the smallest detail. And so for that card, from what I'm aware of, that card came out the same time Sugimori's art book came out. So Sugimori released an art book in 2015 or 2016 of all of his different works with Sega, with Pokemon, Game Freak, all these different things. And at that signing, he was signing his books. And supposedly what I heard with that copy was a regular attendee of his signings came and brought that card, and that was the only card he signed because he technically wasn't signing cards. That was like his thing. Even at this signing was, I'm only signing my art book. I won't sign cards. But because of this guy who was showing up to his signings or became friends with him or somehow made a connection, which is, again, rumors that I'm working with here, Sugimori was willing to sign that one card. And that to date is the only signed card that we've seen that wasn't from 2007.
I just imagine him slipping it in the book, and then he opens the book and the card falls out. Like he just kind of slips it in there. It's like, just, right on the card. It'll go right through. It'll be fine.
But Sugimori is such like an enigma. Like we have no idea where he is, what he's doing. I've heard rumors he doesn't even work in the offices at Game Freak anymore. I've heard people go up to him in the streets in Japan and he'll turn them down for signing product. Like we have no real information about like the godfather of Pokemon who pretty much made everything that we love and enjoy. And it's like we're constantly working with like he said, she said to try to figure out what's even going on with him.
Yeah, it's interesting with that culture as well. It's like a very privatized, like, there's even cards that go up for sale that the original sellers don't even want to be known that they're the ones who sold it because they just want everything completely private. So I think it's one of the things that makes, Arita so interesting because he is so public and he is so involved. And he actually responds when you message him, like on Instagram, which I'm not saying everybody go flood him, but I mean, he'll actually talk to you if you send things to him. So that's really interesting when you talk about like the godfather of Pokemon. Even on the street, he's like, no, just Heisman's them. Like, I'm not doing cards today. Get away. It makes sense why the signatures are so much. Yeah.
And a part of me just thinks he's getting old and like doesn't care for the things that we're all chasing after. I think I looked recently and he's like in his mid 60s now. So I could hardly imagine like, someone who's the age of like my dad wanting to fly internationally for a 3-day event to sit for 12 hours doing these signings, hand cramping, like all this stuff. And like, even like the whole COVID scare, like there's so many things that make me think like if I was his age, would I even care to be doing this anymore? Like,
right.
So over Pokemon, that's been my life for the last 25 years. Let me just enjoy myself and stay in my house,
Yeah, he's like, I'm not even going into the offices. I'm definitely not hopping on a plane to the U.S. and going into a bunch of signings.
His Twitter is rare. He rarely tweets about Pokemon on his Twitter account. So he does have a Twitter account, which he does not respond to anybody on that. And Pokemon is like a once in the blue moon thing that he'll post on there. For the most part, he's posting like Gundams. He's posting all these other projects that he's worked on or is working on. And it seems like for Pokemon specifically, he doesn't care too much to be trying to put stuff out there for it. So it almost gives me personally like the sense of like, and I know like a lot of artists, they want to go on to new projects. They want to be recognized for new things. Kind of like Tokia, if that's how you pronounce their name. They're like a new entity. They're doing new projects and they want to be recognized for that. They don't really want to be recognized for Pokemon. That's an old project. So like for Sugimori and even Arita, these guys have been doing Pokemon for the last 25 years. And I think they're kind of at the point now where they want to move past that and, be recognized or just take joy in something else that's not Pokemon related.
Get something fresh. Yeah. It definitely makes sense. Well, I know one of the things I did want to ask, when it comes to actual illustrators themselves. So I know I loved Jen Ment's 2019 Worlds Recap video, by the way. One of the best things like ever to see the pre-boom hobby. If anybody who hasn't seen that yet, Jen Ment Pokemon put out a recap video, and I can't remember who put it together for him, but it's kind of a behind the scenes of Worlds 2019. And one of the coolest things, I mean, Jeremy, you're in there and you see a lot of other people, just a really, really cool community of people that are involved in that. But one of the things that he put in that video, and I wanted to ask you about, so the Christopher Rush autoed Mewtwo. Have you ever had another Christopher Rush autoed card, or was that the one and done, and that's the one that you sold to Jim Ment, and you haven't had one since?
No, so I've had like 5 or 6 of those.
Okay.
So Rush was a signing beast back in the day. So
okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, in the Magic community, Rush's signature is not worth a whole lot because he was known for being at every single event, signing every single card, customizing, like you name it. For years, he was doing that. But I think a lot of people didn't have, the mindset of like, oh wait, this guy signed or this guy drew the only Pokemon card by an English artist. And a lot of people, I don't think, thought to bring Pokemon cards, at least his Mewtwo, to those events. And just through, my hours and hours of digging on the internet, researching Facebook, Twitter, all these different websites, I've come across Magic the Gathering collectors who had Christopher Rush signed Mewtwo's, but never even thought twice about them because that's like a whole different world.
Right.
So they're out there. And I would say, they're pretty scarce, similarly to other signed cards. But yeah, Christopher Rush, man, he's like our Arita, except probably worse with how much he's signed.
And that's funny because and for anybody who's not familiar, Christopher Rush was the guy who drew the Black Lotus, like the Alpha Lotus from Magic. I mean, it's just the most iconic, most expensive card in Magic the Gathering. And I wasn't aware of as many other properties that he worked on. So even hearing that, he was a signing beast, he was only signing everything, had no idea. I saw the card and I thought, wow, I wonder how rare it is for someone in the Magic community to, first off, illustrate a Pokemon card, and then much less actually have somebody think, I'm going to go to this Magic signing and have him sign a Mewtwo card. So I just found that such an interesting kind of a collaboration or a smash up between so many IPs with one artist. It definitely stood out. Which, what I'll do, guys, I know, chat, there's a couple of questions on here, but I want to go through one other thing for you, Swole, and then I want to go over one other thing for Cole. So with Christopher Rush, this kind of leads into what you're doing now. Obviously you're going to be working with Kryptik, which if anybody's not familiar, it is a Kickstarter TCG. I don't think that they've shipped everything just yet, but I know it just smashed the Kickstarter records and all of that. And Tanner, the creator, really, really awesome guy, just a really purist when it comes to, his lore and, all of those things. So if you want to maybe give kind of anybody watching an idea of what Kryptik is, how you got involved, in it, and I guess what you think kind of separates that from, the 1,000 other Kickstarter games that are out there right now.
Yeah. I'll make it quick. And this isn't a paid advertisement. Kryptik, for me, it just came to me at a time where I was so burnt out on Pokemon. Like I said, I've been collecting nonstop for the last 10 years, day and night on eBay, Google, Japanese websites, just scouring the internet for Pokemon. And I think it got to a point of almost becoming unhealthy, and I was just burnt. And so at Collecticon Orlando earlier this year, back in March, I wasn't even trying to get into another TCG. I wasn't trying to find Kryptik. I just met Tanner, and you've had a chance to kind of communicate with Tanner yourself too here and there. He's just a nice guy.
Yeah, we had a funny exchange on his Whatnot stream yesterday. It was pretty great.
Yeah, he's just a down to earth guy, and I was burnt out by these other TCGs. And so nothing against all these new up and coming TCGs, but I just wasn't a fan of any of them. I felt like they were all trying to grab bits and pieces of Pokemon and recreate that. And when I met Tanner, it was just refreshing. He himself has owned an LGS for years. He just gave me the impression of this is a collector like myself who decided if I was to make a trading card game, this is how I would do it. So everything about the artwork, the fact that he cares so much about an actual playable TCG, not a simple, attack and defense with a spell kind of thing. He actually put a lot of time and effort with game developers and mechanics. I just met him and was like, dang, this guy actually is trying to make a viable TCG. He's not like a quick money grab hype beast boy trying to put his hand in everyone's pocket. So I went home and I didn't really think about it much. And then he sent me some free product to look at. And, the more and more I looked at it, the artists, the work he had done, I was like, dang, this is actually kind of fun and rejuvenating. And so from that point forward, I just started collecting it here and there for fun, buying, selling, and trading. I learned the game. It's the first TCG I've ever learned how to play, and I play it every day now with the people in the community. And so because of just me being so involved, being so excited about it, he just asked if I wanted to come on and help him out with marketing, product design, character development, all these different things. And it's been a blast. It's nice having this in my back pocket for when Pokemon becomes a little too much and I need a break.
Right.
And that's just kind of a quick summary of how I got into it and why I enjoy it. It's just I recommend it for anyone. It doesn't have to be Kryptik, but with Pokemon, if you spend a majority of your day thinking, breathing, living it, you're going to get burnt out. And it's the worst feeling not having joy in the thing that brings you the most joy. So, and for me, it was Kryptik.
Well, I'll say, just kind of echo that. Even myself, I've been in Pokemon for a good while now, and like you said, you get a little burnout, maybe not burnout, but bored. You kind of want to see refreshing stuff. You kind of want to see new things, and I've even gotten a lot more involved in like Dragon Ball stuff recently, and then Kryptik was one of those things I can't remember exactly how I stumbled across it, but I remember seeing you post it for a while before you even said that, hey, I'm actually involved with this company. So that was one thing I thought was, pretty genuine, is the fact that you were a fan first and then, obviously came on board after that. And speaking from someone who is primarily Pokemon, the art itself is amazing. That's one of my favorite things about it. And it's got a very, very cool backstory that I haven't even begun to scratch the surface of. But I mean, just paying that much attention to like the lore, the backstory, the characters. I mean, it really, at least, from Tanner's standpoint, creating it, it really shows that he's, like you said, not a money grab or not anything, just trying to print cardboard for, and trade it in for dollars. It actually is a passion project, that he's done.
Yeah.
So, if anybody watching, hasn't looked at it, their Kickstarter page has all the information and everything on there. Obviously Jeremy's Instagram, he posts a lot of it on there as well. So, really, really great, thing to look at. And Cole, I wanted to kind of end on this, and then we'll get to a few chat questions that we've got. But and this one will probably make you smile because and I'll ask you to extrapolate a little bit. Could you talk about your experience with the Flareon Gold Star or Flareon Gold Star that you went through trying to get that authenticated? And if you could give me maybe an idea of maybe your idea of how people can prevent themselves from getting a card signed and the PSA saying that it's questionable. Is it a picture? Is it documenting something? Do you take a video of the artist saying, PSA, I'm real, I promise? Like what kind of avoids that? So that was one of the things I wanted to ask you about.
So yeah, that was a fun one. I purchased it raw from a guy on Facebook. I actually posted, I was looking to trade for a signed Rayquaza Gold Star. The guy reached out to me and said, hey, I have this Flareon. Oh, sick. He provided me with pictures of the signing. He sent it in, I don't remember who it was, but he sent it to somebody who was accepting cards to get signed in 2020. He got it. I ended up getting it from him under the stipulation that it would be deemed authentic. And so he sent me the card. I sent it off to PSA, and it comes back questionable authenticity. Like, oh, well, fun. That's, $100 down the drain. That's great. Sent it back again 3 months later with no additional paperwork. Once again, came back questionable. And at that point, I was like, all right, I'm done with it. I don't want to. I thought about reaching out to PSA and trying to give them some of that provenance for the card. But looking at it from an external point of view, I realized that, well, the pictures weren't of that card itself being signed. So it could have just been, some pictures that someone took off the internet, for example. So I was just kind of stuck with, okay, well, that might just be it. And I ended up parting with that card. I sold it to a guy who's a big Flareon collector. His name's Jack. He got it. I told him, hey, it's been rejected by PSA a couple times. Here's all the provenance I have for it. And he's like, no, sure, I'll still take it. So I sold it to him for the exact same price that was agreed upon for the purchase originally. Because I didn't want to be that guy who made a bunch of money on something that was deemed
past the buck.
Yeah. And so what ended up happening was he sent it to PSA and it comes back authentic first try. And I was like, oh, maybe PSA just doesn't like me. I don't know. Realistically, I think getting as much provenance as you can for stuff is important, but at the end of the day, there's not going to be too much you're able to do because it does come down to their opinion. Now, I have spoken with, I think he wants his name not to be said publicly, the guy who authenticates all of the entertainment class of autographs for PSA. So he handles all the Pokemon autographs. He told me that the individual that was the primary person in that role before he got to PSA was not particularly good. As a result, there were fakes they got through. I mean, there are at least half a dozen, at least fake Sugimoris. There's, I think, 2 listed on eBay right now that are up for sale, that have been up for sale for a year because they're just so blatantly fake, but they're certified by PSA. So hopefully now with a new individual taking up that position with a little bit more passion behind it, I think there's a little bit less risk of that sort of thing happening. But that is definitely a very real thing, having to deal with fake autographs. Jeremy and I had a conversation a few months ago as he was selling a Professor Oak card, and there was a reverse Legendary Collections Machamp that had the exact same autograph as his. And so he had to go through and figure out that his was signed first, had better provenance. And so it was fairly apparent that the person who had the signed Machamp either used an auto pen to replicate the autograph, or just was a really good forger and just basically traced it. But that's a very real and dangerous thing. And that experience with the Flareon has transitioned into me exclusively dealing with previously authenticated PSA cards, because I know of people who have been burned numerous times trying to deal with that. And I'm not a handwriting expert. I do my best whenever I go through the process to try to figure out if there's provenance behind the card. But for some of the stuff, it's just, you have to take somebody's word for it. And there's not much more you can do about that, especially with some of these more rare cards. The only exception for something like that would be like I've purchased 3 Nishida autograph cards, and they all came from one of the individuals that was directly involved in the private signing. So it's like, okay, the fact that he's selling it lets me know that it's real. And then they've all come back authenticated by PSA, luckily. And it's how to get around that, or how to provide PSA with more evidence so that you don't have that problem. I don't have enough personal experience to say whether or not you can provide information that'll actually be able to be beneficial. But I would imagine if you provide PSA a video of the card being signed, they're going to have a hard time telling you no.
And they say, PSA, please authenticate this card from the illustrator. That's how you do it. Well, cool, guys. Well, I know we've got 6 or 7 minutes left, so I want to go through just kind of a couple of chat questions, and then we'll wrap up. So Mason Berry, Cardinal Gaming, awesome guy if anybody's not following him. Pokemon is getting a lot more well-known artists to do modern card arts. Do you see where we could see predominant manga artists doing art for cards in the future? I don't necessarily have a huge opinion on this because I don't read manga, I don't follow it, but I wouldn't see why not. I mean, at that point, they basically are artists already kind of in that world, I would imagine. I don't know if you guys have a different opinion on that or an add-on to it.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't even know Pokemon's method for finding artists when it comes to doing their cards. I know some artists have done projects for other companies, like Hitoshi Ariga. He was found by Ken Sugimori because of being one of the main artists for the Mega Man manga. But outside of that, Pokemon just seems to be hiring artists, a lot of artists as of lately, to be doing the newer cards. I feel like every time I open up a pack, I don't recognize a single name for the cards done. And it doesn't seem like they hire already well-known artists. And I could assume, that would be pricey, hiring the artist of One Piece or Naruto to come in and draw you a card, when you could get an off-the-street artist who's probably willing to be commissioned for the amount of work they do, and it's a lot cheaper cost than teaming up with another well-known entity or manga to do one piece that might charge you, cost you the cost of working with 10 different artists who aren't known.
It's a good point. This is a really nice one from Your Average Player. There's a signing by Arita here in Norway soon. What card would you bring if you got the opportunity?
So I kind of want to sidestep this question real quick and talk about Arita went to a signing event a couple months ago. Well, he went to an event where he spoke, and he signed one Pokemon card. It was in the Middle East. I can't remember exactly which country it was in. He signed one Fossil Articuno, and that was the only card. And he posted it, tagged Arita, and then Arita commented, "Yeah, you were the only person who brought Pokemon for me to sign." So if you're going to a Norway signing, there may not be too many people, although there are plenty of European collectors.
So bring a deck box, just start piling them on there, flood the market.
I actually had that conversation with somebody. We were talking about like how easy it would be to make a ridiculous amount of money off of that sort of signing, and like how cost efficient it would be to do that. So Arita was supposed to come down to Jacksonville, Florida for a signing this past year, and it ended up getting canceled because of COVID restrictions. And we were sitting here thinking, well, you can buy a Shadowless Charizard or a base set Charizard for a couple $100, get a stack of them, have them sign a few, sell each of them for $2,000 after you authenticate it, and boom, there your trip and your flights paid for it. And I think that sort of mentality is causing a lot of stress with some of these illustrators. We've seen at events where, or even just the Tokia signing recently, by the time we got to Sunday, it was like the same 10 people were all in line together getting more cards
just
signed.
multiples of the cards getting graded.
And luckily it's a lot of people who are interested enough that they want it for their collections. Or so Dick and Jane's down in Florida, we were the primary sponsor for that event, so we had multiple people in line getting a bunch of stuff signed, and we ended up getting those cards out to various people just to help out. We got some stuff signed for Cloud TCG. We got some stuff signed for Red and Blue. Just trying to help people out who weren't able to make it to the event. And we haven't seen a massive flood of those cards coming into the market yet, which I think is good, because it means that a lot of the people that were getting them were just interested in having the cards signed. So I guess if you're going to the signing and you're interested in making money, have Arita sign a Charizard. If you are interested in getting something signed by him because you're interested in it, I would take a look at and figure out what your favorite artwork by him is. So my personal one is the secret rare Mewtwo from Shining Legends. It's my favorite Mewtwo artwork. It's one of my favorite artworks that Arita's ever done. And if I had to choose one Arita card that I have in my collection to just keep forever, it would be that one. So if I was going to get something signed and I didn't have anything signed by him, that would be my card because it's my favorite.
Jeremy?
For me, I've actually been sitting on these cards for like 3 years because COVID happened and we lost all signing events. But I've always wanted the entire Verse series set that he illustrated signed by him. So he drew all of the Prices Pokemon cards, Pryce. The Articuno, the Lapras, I think a Jinx might be in there, a Cloyster. And so I thought it'd be cool to have him sign the whole set of the water type Pokemon for my collection. And I still have them right over here, just waiting for a signing event to happen. But I think those are super overlooked as far as the uniqueness of them and the fact that he drew all like 6 or 7 Pokemon for that set.
That'd be a fun binder to look at, all of them together. That would be awesome.
I guess one of the things that sorry to cut you off, but one of the things that Luke, Too Slowbro, has tried to do is he's compiling the pictures of one of every card from base set signed by the illustrators. He's obviously not collecting them themselves because most of the Sugimori stuff from base set is all pop 1 and hasn't been seen in ever. But he's trying to get images of all of them so he can just have a big collage of all 102 cards in base set signed by the original illustrators. And I think that would be a cool project if he's ever able to finish that one.
I think he's using that Electabuzz.
Is he?
As the Electabuzz photo.
That's close enough, yeah.
Yeah, a jumbo winner one.
No, that's amazing. All right, guys, so just to respect some time, we'll go through 1 or 2 more. This one's pretty easy. Basic Trainer, yes, he will be at Long Beach.
Dude,
he's giving me a hard time because I won't be there. Oh, he's awesome, man. I went to Lee's pop-up shop. Obviously, we were there, or both of us were there, and right when I just walked in, I just hear, "Ah!" and I look up and I just see him on stage pulling the Charizard. So yeah, that was That was legendary with the rattle shirt, which made it even more funny.
He's one of the coolest guys we meet. Basic trainers, super, super sweet.
Yeah, and he will be in every single live video. You farm the rabbit holes of YouTube, he's probably in there somewhere. So he's in them all. So what we'll do, guys, we'll do one last question for Mr. Walrus, and I think we'll be good to wrap up everything. He said, with high-end cards fluctuating in price drastically, when selling, when is okay to lose money on a card and just take the L? It's a good question.
I think it's it depends on the individual and what your financial position is. I mean, if you need money and you have no other source of income and your car breaks down and you need another car and you have a card that used to be worth $10,000 and now it's $5,000, you're kind of in that position where you have to sell. But there's kind of that old meme saying where you never lose money until you sell something. And if you wait long enough, as long as Pokemon doesn't die, which there's no reason for me to believe it would, it'll go back up eventually, hopefully. So if you're able to hold on to it, I wouldn't see a reason why you would want to sell it at a loss unless you just need the money.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and the diamond hands take for sure. My answer to that question would be, if you're, especially, and high end is subjective. Obviously, high end could be a couple $100s, it can be a few $1,000s. But if you are buying something that feels high end to yourself, don't leverage yourself to where you have to feel like you have to sell or you have to take the loss. If you're buying something that's definitely gonna be high end, don't plan on quick flipping something. It's just not going to be, it's not a good strategy to do long term. You might win a couple of times, but you'll always end up in the situation you're describing where you feel like you have to, take the loss. So that would be my advice. If you are going to buy something high end, plan, hey, I can hold this for a year and I'm fine. And if you sell it in a month, great. If you don't, then you're still okay. That would be my recommendation. Jeremy, I'm curious on your
made that mistake
with the 3 trophy Kangs, by the way, the super flex, just getting started in the grading.
Yeah, I guess the idea of high end and losing money doesn't mesh well with me, and that might sound like conceited or cocky, but I've never bought anything that I've lost money on. So if you're buying something high end, which there's plenty of options out there for high end, there's obviously calculated risks that you can take to ensure that you either won't lose money or you're going to lose as little money as possible. If you were buying base set PSA 9 Charizards a year ago, those could be considered high end, and now that wasn't probably the best investment. And you probably could have made better decisions with your money if you were looking for high end assets that would hold their value over time. Whereas, you look at signed cards a year ago, you could probably pick up any signed artist you want for $1,000. And we're seeing cards now, breaking the 5-figure mark. So I'd say, if you're looking to buy high-end items that you don't want to lose money on, try looking to diversify yourself into products that are not easily as accessible and don't have thousands and thousands of copies sitting around for a market to be flooded with when it starts tanking. And all of a sudden you're looking at a card that you paid 4 times the price of it going for in today's market.
I think it's a really good take because there's a lot of whales out there who are sitting on a lot of a card that seems scarce. And that's one thing when you start looking at fundamentals of something, if you can find a card that actually has accurate, quote unquote, counts of how many were released, that's always a good starting point, because high end, the way I view high end is not necessarily, okay, the price is really high. High end is, in my opinion, high end rarity, high end collectability, high end demand. I mean, there's certain cards that you chase after that, like Jeremy said earlier, you kind of just dig for hours and hours and hours, and you might see one pop up a year or once a year. Or you might find one guy that took you 3, the only collectibles who bought the number 1 female trainer. He talked to the guy for 10 years before he finally actually got him to sell. I mean, that's the type of high-end purchase that I think is kind of worth the quote-unquote gamble. But I think your safety net of demand is going to save you from that. So, I think that's a really good take.
But, and I also wouldn't recommend setting a record price for something if you're planning on selling it anytime soon.
Yeah.
Don't be the guy that pays $64,000 for a Magikarp 9 and then expect you're going to be able to sell it for $100 the next month. Like, it's just not the reality of the situation.
And we've seen auction blocks, unfortunately, bite people for that. You know, how many trophies have we seen in, let's say, the last 5 months? I mean, that have hit auction blocks, stuff that we've never seen pop up. And it's like, oh, it's on PWCC this week. I'm almost desensitized to it, which is crazy. I'm like, oh, another snap card. Oh, another 98, like number 2. It's like, what? You know, you look at that a couple of years ago. It's like, these don't just pop up. You know, these are on a old SM Pratt video, you know, for the most part. But, well, guys, I know we've hit our time. I so appreciate both of you guys for, you know, taking the time out, especially during the day. Chat, you guys are awesome. Thank you for the questions. I will go ahead and say our next episode, we are going to have Jake Pokenomics and Old School Pokemon, Nick, on together. So that will be, I want to say, a week from today, actually, same time. So, you know, but that being said, guys, anything, events, projects, just anything you guys want to shout out before we end? We can start with you, Cole.
Yeah, Collecticon. That's going to be the big one. I'm looking forward to that. I finally get to actually meet Jeremy in person after talking to him for the past year. So I'm looking forward to that. That's always my favorite part, just going to events and meeting people. Other than that, we do have a blog post that'll be coming out, going a little bit more in depth with updated numbers on all of the price analysis we've done. We also have a little bit of regression that we did with the Arita stuff because we had so many data points. We were actually able to get a formula that accounts for about 75% of the variance in pricing. So trying to provide some of that basic information for people who want to just get a basic price line for stuff. But other than that, I'm just excited to continue getting that information out.
Awesome. Yeah, same for me. Kryptik, or not Kryptik, Kryptik. Collecticon.
He plugs it immediately. No, I'm just
right. Collecticon for me will be the next event I'll be at too. I highly recommend anyone who can make it to try to check it out. It's a super fun event for every reason imaginable. Meeting collectors that you've known for years online, buying, selling products. Overall, I think Collecticon is like the go-to event for card collectors now. So definitely check it out if you haven't gone before. And then, yeah, like I said, Kryptik. If you guys want something new to collect, play, you want to have like a refreshing collector feeling again, I'd say check out Kryptik, but it doesn't even have to be that. It can be whatever you'd like it to be.
The box break from you.
There you go.
I was lucky enough to win one of those. It was great.
That's it for me. I'm just trying to have fun with this and meet new faces and find new rare cards.
Love it. Are you guys going to be? I think I asked you this earlier, but are you guys going to be in Denver for that Collecticon?
I think I will be
in October.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm trying to be at every Collecticon event.
Gotcha. That's gonna be fun. I'll see you guys there. So, other than that, so appreciate it, guys. Chat, you were awesome. Thank you so much for joining. And other than that, guys, I'll see you guys later. Thank you.
Thank you.
Peace out, dude. Thank you so much.